So I am the president of this wonderful association we've been forming. And so I want to welcome you to the NorCal Somatic Experiencing Professional Association of the Mark Schuler Speaker Series. Some of you may remember Mark Schuler. He passed away 2016 and left us his estate for specifically learning SE from each other and practicing and becoming better practitioners. NorCal SEPA is a professional association that supports SEPs in the Northern California region to have impact, network, and to step into leadership roles. So please join us and consider serving on our board or committees and help us lead the way for SE in Northern California. This is our fourth speaker event, and we're very grateful to have such a talented and impactful SE leader with us today. We're grateful to have Christine Donohue help us embody SE and support our practices and communities in her talk on working with complex PTSD, developmental wounds in individual therapy. She brings tremendous depth and skill to our community. And so now I will pass to Mike to introduce Christine Donohue.
Hi, my name's Mike Chingaris. I'm a he, they pronoun type of person, and I'm grateful to introduce a dear friend and colleague, Christine Donohue. Christine Donohue is one of those really talented people that has an alphabet soup after her name because of all of the work that she's put in. She's MFT, SCP, CMT, and is licensed in both California and New Jersey. She's a certified somatic experiencing practitioner who serves those in Mill Valley, SF, and throughout California and New Jersey. She brings 30 years of experience in body-based healing, including hands-on energetic and SE sessions, psychotherapeutic approaches to clients, and workshop leader. Christine specializes in complex and developmental trauma, chronic health issues, and supporting thriving relationships. She is a senior teacher and previous director of the Creative Arts Department of the Barbara Brennan School of Healing for 7 years, was an associate professor at CIIS in the Somatics and Integral Counseling Psychology Department, and for 5 years was an assistant clinical director for the Community Institute of Psychotherapy in San Rafael. Combining somatic, psychodynamic, and transpersonal approaches, Christine works with adults of all ages, couples, families, and groups, and MFT interns. And since 1991, she's been studying and practicing energetic healing, SE, Gestalt, and other body-based modalities. We are grateful to have her time, skill, and talent with us. I know we'll deepen as people and as clinicians from the contact. If you would like more information about Christine, go to www.christinedonohue.com. And I hope you get as much enlightenment and joy as I have. I've learned so much from Christine as a colleague over the years. I feel deepened by her clinical skill, her presence, and her capacity. And I really am hoping you get the same joy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike, and welcome everyone. And I know that some people are going to be listening to this recording, so I welcome those who couldn't join us and are going to be seeing this recording and part of the community, and you're thought of in this moment. So hopefully you'll feel that. And I wanted to say just a couple things, but first, welcome each of you. And if you would like to put in the chat your name and where you are in this moment, and if you're from and live in a different area than where you are, just feel free. I think of this as a circle, and I think of it as a global community, and technology is letting us be together. So I just want to make room for your voice, and that will be part of the intention for today. I have a lot of material, so I'm going to jump in with that. There's a probably a moment, there'll be a time for a question or two. There'll be also an experiential and a discussion at the end, hopefully. So without further ado, let me let you know just the reason that I even chose this topic, which is, yes, Maureen, thank you for your introduction of the piece, is because Mike and Mark Ludwig, we talked on the phone, and I really thank Mike and Mark and the whole association for inviting me to speak. And there was really an organic bottom-up experience of even designing what this talk would be about. And I want to let you know that my passion is to empower people. So my hope is and intention is to empower you to support your clients. And when we were talking about topics, I can tell you that a couple or a few clients really showed up in the conversation. And that is where a composite client that I will present has just formed via the relational experience of the conversation that we had. So without further ado, I do have a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to share my screen, and here goes. So let's get this available, and testing my high-tech or low-tech skills. So this is the title, as Maureen said, working with complex PTSD, developmental wounds in individual therapy, and using somatic experiencing and Gestalt-based work to help clients grow their relationship to self. And I am excited to share some of this with you. As I mentioned, just my passion, I do go by she, hers, and I do want to preface, I am not a formally Gestalt, I'm not a Gestalt therapist. What I am is my journey, my lineage is from the Neo-Reichian character defense structures that I studied in the early 90s. Then I did a Gestalt intensive at Esalen in 96. And there's just been a progression, and I've utilized that in my work over time. And I would be remiss to not mention that really the container that I work with when it comes to parts is the character defense structures. And I'll just mention that briefly, but I think that the lineage is an important variable, and the Gestalt is an aspect that's been in evolution over decades for me. And what I would love and what I will do with all of you is to work together to create a container for our time together. And so what I tell my clients and what I'll say for each of you is you always have choice whenever you're with me in terms of training or otherwise. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes. And if it doesn't feel right, please honor yourself. But my invitation is to go inside, close your eyes, and take a moment to honor the ancestors that have come before you. And the resiliency, whether their struggles were great, the resiliency with which allowed you to be present here. And I want to invite you to, for a moment, welcome any ancestors who would like to be present on behalf of your lineage. And welcome the land of your ancestors. And then to presence yourself, I want to invite you to connect with the land that is under your feet in this moment. And to connect with the indigenous people and all of their stewardship that they brought to the land that's beneath your feet. And you can keep your eyes closed while I read you a poem that to me really holds this intention for my talk. And you can open your eyes or keep your eyes closed. And it's a very soulful poet who luckily is still with us. His name is Mark Nepo. Beautiful, beautiful poet. And this poem is called Breaking Surface. Let no one keep you from your journey. no rabbi or priest, no mother who wants you to dig for treasures she misplaced, no father who won't let one life be enough, no lover who measures their worth by what you might give up, no voice that tells you in the night it can't be done. Let nothing dissuade you from seeing what you see, or feeling the winds that make you want to dance alone, or go where no one has yet to go. You are the only explorer, your heart, the unreadable compass, your soul, the shore of a promise too great to be ignored. So welcome. Yes. And I hope you can see these slides. I'm definitely utilizing the whole screen. So just do whatever you need to do. I'm moving your faces a little bit around. So whatever you need to do, hopefully you can see. So this was similar to the flyer, the Earth Bright that you saw, but just to name it and just to speak to it, these are intentions, knowing this is just the tip of the iceberg. I could do 2-day training just on this topic for the beginning phase. So this is just like a conversation, but the intention is to really show how somatic experiencing tools with Gestalt really can support a client, their self-connection, even if they use intellectualization, denial, and compartmentalization. I am assuming that those who are here, I'm going to just not describe each term and just welcome if that's something that you want to look up, please feel free. But creating safety for someone who has profound early developmental trauma, very complex trauma, safety is crucial. And I look at these aspects, denial, compartmentalization, intellectualization, as protectors. So I honor them and I pace accordingly. So again, pacing with clients who become overwhelmed with interoception, really important, working with young states. And then how a client grows an internalized self when they experienced abuse or betrayal by a parent or caregiver, which is that if they didn't have that one main attachment figure, how do you forge that as an adult and actually create internal constancy or work towards that? And again, each of these pieces could be a week-long training. But lastly, how a client with a history of developmental complex PTSD learns to value themselves and set healthy boundaries in their lives. And what I can say is there is always hope. And in my work, I'm so blessed to work with the clients who it's very collaborative, and there's so much that I learn and that I have found so useful with SE and parts work combined. So let's see if I can hit my, yeah, there we go. So what I'd like to do, because we're not in a circle in physical space, I just have 4 questions. I'd like to get to know who you are, how you learn. So again, you always have choice, but I am going to post a poll. And Mike, is that something that you can do for me? Okay. And it's 4 questions. So for those who are open, it would help me get to know how you learn and what your intentions are for today, given the choices I've offered. Let's just take a minute for that. Thank you. So just take a moment to finish the poll, seeing that folks are from all over California, Asheville, North Carolina, Oxford, Berkeley, Sacramento, Walnut Creek. It's lovely.
We have 5 completers and 8 here, which means
Okay.
we need 1 or so more.
Mhm.
Folks, if you'd like to complete it, it'd be a real gift to know a little bit more about you.
Mike, I don't know if it's because I'm a co-host, but it doesn't let me take the poll.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think what I'll do is I will end here. I thank those who share results. Okay. So I'm just gonna go through this so that I can get a sense of how you learn best. So for those who are visual and visual and auditory, you're in for a treat. For those who are kinesthetic, hopefully the brief experiential will give you the felt sense. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So
Christine, do you want me to share the results or not?
if they're anonymous, I just want to honor people. I want, if it's anonymous, certainly.
It is anonymous.
Great.
Except
Why
for
don't
those
we?
really shaming questions. We made sure that those are.
Let me share. Okay, if you share the results, I want to make sure I can. Oh, there we go. Yeah, just to be able to see that kind of our circle. Okay, so excellent. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for those who filled that out. And I'm just going to close that. All right. Here we go. So another piece just that I hold in this container is these quotes really bring words to the intention as well. And this is a quote by Jonathan Van Ness, who is a Queer Eye star, and this is from his memoir. Learning to parent yourself with soothing, compassionate love. That's the key to being fulfilled. And from Fritz Perls, who's the founder of Gestalt therapy, this achieving the center, being grounded in oneself, is about the highest state a human being can achieve. And so the intention is to support these to move forward for you and your clients. And as I said at the beginning, my lineage very much, and I'm immensely steeped in the Neo-Reichian character defense structures, not like I wouldn't even call myself that as a therapist, but it is part of my container. And it's part of that dual consciousness, one being deeply present with the client and the moment to moment unfolding. And then the other aspect of my consciousness is the theory and all the developmental psychology and the character defense structures and somatic experiencing, all the theories and the work that I've done on behalf of myself and my clients is the other. So when I sit with clients and in terms of parts work, this is part of Fritz Perls' lineage. He was influenced by Wilhelm Reich. He was in a seminar with Wilhelm Reich in Berlin when he, a technical seminar. And Wilhelm Reich, who is he formulated the character defense structures. He was actually one of his advisors, Gestalt founder Fritz Perls. So he was his supervising senior analyst. So what I want to offer in this slide is for just the invitation when you're with a client to hold with curiosity, perhaps what wound may be triggered with an overwhelming traumatic event. And obviously it's not an event if it's developmental. So just as you're with a client, just to be holding the question or the wondering of what wound may be surfacing that needs to be heard, seen, and met. And so Wilhelm Reich formulated 5 core wounds, not formulated, but put together. And then like Hakomi definitely expanded to 9. So just to put them on the map though, that existential terror, abandonment, invasion, betrayal, and conditional love. I just watch, listen, and I hold space for the energetics of those states, and also simply to hold them in my consciousness with curiosity. The character defense structures correlate with the coloring. So that's something, if you're interested, you could look up later. And in terms of Fritz Perls, who is the founder of Gestalt, he was very influenced by Reichian work because it talks about the character structures. And in terms of Gestalt, Wilhelm Reich, Fritz Perls didn't create the word Gestalt, but he took that word, which is from German, and he brought it as a therapeutic modality. And it means in German wholeness and completeness. And so his work is about honoring the parts in service of wholeness, which for somatic experiencing we could look at as coherency, greater coherency. And Gestalt assumes that the reason that we create these parts is that we disown aspects that might meet social disapproval or rejection. And the goals of Gestalt therapy are very compatible with our intention for somatic experiencing: increased sense of self-regulation, to establish a continuum of awareness, which is that ongoing beingness you could think of in Winnicott, and it's to be aware from a second to second what's going on, which is so compatible with Peter Levine's approach of experience what happens next and help ushering a client to tolerate the unknown, to have their relationship to themselves to be an unfolding now. And I find Gestalt to be immensely supportive for that. When Fritz Perls worked Gestalt, and oftentimes, like when I was at Esalen, my experience was a lot of group work and chair work for individuals. And now what I want to say, just to put it on the map again, is that Dick Schwartz, his lineage is connected to Gestalt. But let me do one more quote from Fritz Perls. And his perspective is awareness per se can be curative, because with full awareness, you can become aware of the organismic self-regulation. You can let the organism take over without interfering, without interrupting. We can rely on the wisdom of the organism, which sounds so similar to aspects of somatic experiencing. And to give you a sense of what Gestalt is, it is the intention to, if you had chairs and you had perhaps your self-critic in one chair, you might have the rebellious teenager in another that you've identified with the practitioner. And then maybe, in his example, it may be the child who is abandoned, either physically or emotionally, and that you give full voice to each part. And that is the intention for moving chairs, that it's like a talking stick that goes to that chair, that voice speaks from the I, and it's not, oh, well, this part, thinks this way. It's I feel frustrated. I feel sad. I am resentful. I feel alone. So each part gives full voice, and then there's working in between to negotiate those parts and negotiate between them. So just to define how aspects of Gestalt work, and in a group setting, it's a little bit different. In my experience, I don't do any group Gestalt work, so I'm only speaking about individual. And as I mentioned, to put Dick Schwartz on the map, because his work is just so beautiful, so respectful, and I think so brilliant. So Dick Schwartz is the founder of Internal Family Systems, and this might be new for some of you, and some of you as therapists, I'm sure, have heard, dabbled, or even done some work yourself. What I can say is I'm very IFS informed. That's an aspect that I endeavor in my own journey and relationship with self. And I just put these two quotes in as just to, again, honor the lineage. And this is from Dick Schwartz. These parts are not imaginary or symbolic. They are individuals who exist in an internal family within us. And the key to health and happiness is to honor, understand, and love every part. And what I would also say is to listen. And I find that to be immensely healing. And within the context of somatic experiencing, honoring the protectors, which may have been freeze, appease, or complete. For children, developmental, it's usually freeze or appease, or fawn, because you can't fight your way out when you're 5 and you can't back up and move. So again, some overlap, and we're getting into the somatic experiencing in just a moment. And then just lastly, I think this speaks just to sum up some of internal family systems. From IFS point of view, the quieting of the mind associated with mindfulness happens when the parts of us usually running our lives, our egos, relax, which then allows parts we have tried to bury, exiles, to ascend, bringing with them the emotions, beliefs, and memories they carry, burdens that got them locked away in the first place. So there's a trajectory, and again, I'm speaking loosely with Gestalt, but it's really parts work that I want to bestow to you all. So let me take a moment and invite you to either close your eyes and connect with yourself, get up and stretch, or orient. Let your eyes wander wherever you like to, wherever your eyes want to go, just to take a pause, because this is a lot of information. If you want to stretch, we're all somatic therapists or SE practitioners, so sitting still is not necessarily our style. So yes, all right. Okay, so what I'll say is, and you can stretch anytime, please take care of yourself. Trying to find my slide. Here it is. Okay, so what I will say is that how I work with parts work is to very much honor the protectors and reframe, if you will, if it's a self-critic, that is a protector to keep our essence intact. And that's what I hold for this whole process of protectors and parts, is the intention is to keep this unique spark that each of you are, that even if you believe in past lives, there's been no configuration of your embodiment of essence. And that's the whole reason to do the work, is to be able to make more room for that and to honor the parts that are overlaying to protect it, or that create a wall to keep it safe. And so I very much hold that as a tenet, to offer compassion and curiosity, which are important also to Gestalt, is curiosity, compassion, creativity, attention, and awareness. Yes. So within the context of somatic experiencing, I'm going to just share with you how because this comes to mind with pacing, and it's important with complex PTSD states. I do not rush into somatic experiencing, and I certainly don't rush into parts work. And what I say to every client who I work with, every person I talk with on the phone who's interested to work with me, is my intention is to do my very best to ensure that no one who works with me, and this is to the highest potential I have, enters a state of overwhelm, because that is what trauma is a state of overwhelm. So pacing is crucial. So when I talk with someone on the phone, and when I'm going to be presenting this composite, I'll let you know a little bit about the assessment. But I do a phone assessment. Oopsie, hold on. I'm trying to see what yes. So I assess for the historic and current experience with anxiety, depression, and substances, including internet and food. And when I ask that question, it's giving me the beginning understanding, not just, I don't take a trauma history on the phone, and I don't take a trauma history actually in the beginning of my work. I let it unfold, and I want to be able to be present when someone's speaking, to be able to have them have a different experience. Of course, they could tell me why they've come, of course, but the reason I assess is because I want to know how they've navigated the trauma. So anxiety, I ask if there's insomnia, if there's a generalized anxiety, phobias, panic attacks, tics, compulsions, or intrusive thoughts. And I also ask about autoimmune conditions, again, from a somatic experiencing perspective. What is happening in their physiology? For depression, I ask if they have a general melancholy, kind of on a daily basis, if they've had a major depressive episode, which is that 2-week period of non-functioning. I've asked if they've ever had suicidal thoughts historically or currently, if they've had any suicide attempts, and if they've been hospitalized. So as you can see, I'm wanting to get a sense, and I ask, these are very personal questions, but it's the beginning of really having a sense of how someone's nervous system is navigating the trauma that they've endured. And then lastly, I ask about current and historical experience with substances, including alcohol, drugs, sleeping pills certainly included, and the internet and food. For some individuals, to include that piece of the internet could be someone has a porn addiction, or they find themselves scrolling consistently and numbing out through that, or they do video games most of their free time. And then for food, I just ask someone's relationship to food and if that's ever been a challenge, because again, I want to know how they've navigated some of these overwhelming experiences. And as I present a composite client, I'll let you know a little bit about what the composite woman has experienced. Excuse me. Oh dear, hold on. Oh, here we go. And then the container, that somatic experiencing container, social engagement, working to create the safety via that ventral vagal collaboration and making room. I use humor a lot in my work. I also use a lot of compassion, but it's just to be human, to be able to, I tell people I have my own developmental trauma, complex trauma. And so I keep it real and just to be able to create great rapport and let people know that there's hope. So in addition, let me just check my time here because I want to make sure I'm doing okay. Okay. Yep. So, and I'm from the Boston area, so if I'm talking a little fast, just bear with me. Reread or re-listen to the video. But I would really want to impart as much as I can. And then the psychoeducation and somatic tools that I work, again, to create the conditions for parts work. I never go into parts work without having, I shouldn't say never, but it's not my intention, to build upon creating those internal states. You want to make sure the client has the capacity for interoception, has the capacity to tolerate sensations, and has the capacity to be in the unknown. And if they don't, you do not do parts work, because that's about dropping in to the unconscious. So I use psychoeducation as this lavender colored box above. And I educate clients about the window of tolerance. I show them a PDF and I let them know what hyperarousal is, what the window of tolerance is, what hypoarousal is. I speak about some of what they shared in the phone consultation, and I bring that into the terminology for somatic experiencing. And what I find a very important piece is I also include in the image that I share a dysregulation in that image to give them a context, because with the dysregulation, I can also continue to assess, but I can also bring a lot of compassion. I ask a client, does your anger go from 0 to 100 like right away? Are you Tesla speed? Or do you notice at sometimes that it's a slower build? And if they say, yeah, I notice it's a slower build, I'll say that's because you're dysregulated. You're not already in hyperarousal. And that's the place of empowerment. So I work with my clients to track their activation. Notice, because with the dysregulation, you have access to your frontal cortex. Your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system hasn't taken over fully, and you're in fight or flight. Or on the other, for hypo, you haven't fallen asleep for the night, or you haven't lost time, or you haven't gone out of your body. So the dysregulation on both hyper and hypo is the place where you have the capacity to utilize these somatic experiencing tools as best you can to interrupt the habit and create a new groove. So I work with clients to track their activation and to intervene. If one is the least activated, 10 is I'm already in hyper or hypoarousal, to track and intervene using some of these skills when they're at a 5 or a 6. Because what I find is that when we hit a 7, we're off and running and our nervous system takes over. And before we know it, we've kind of found ourselves in a pretty strong protector. And our nervous system's taken over. And then I do talk about activation, deactivation cycles. There's a really wonderful image. It's very simple, but useful for my purposes when I work with clients in Peter Levine's book, The Unspoken Voice. And that is an image with the coiled spring. And I just tell clients some of what we're going to work with when we do deeper work is going to just have an exercise I'll have you start with. And that's like tugging the spring. But the gift and the healing is actually bringing your intellect to track sensation or image or thought, not thought, but emotion or impulse, and using your intellect to be present. That's what's going to support the deactivation. And that's what's going to support that coiled spring to reverberate. And so clients usually that makes sense. It really is helpful because then you have the buy-in. And what I do and what I did with this composite client is I teach clients skills, and I do it in 2 different ways. If they have more difficulty orienting or dropping in, and I notice their physiology is activated, I start with teaching tools. We don't do a full SE session because I'm titrating the amount of attention and time that they're spending in either interoception or just even in their body, right? Because if you've had profound early developmental trauma and you have PTSD, it's very, very short, very small. Build on success and build the capacity. Those energy wells that Peter Levine talk about, you start really, really gently and titrate and build the capacity. So I start with teaching orienting, and I'll say more about that in a slide. That visual, let your eyes wander wherever they want to go. And then I also invite another way of orienting is notice 2 things that are in your environment visually, notice 2 things that you hear, and 2 things that you feel on the outside of your body. And for people who have a lot of panic states, like this composite client that I'm going to bring up in a moment, having a place of, okay, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I feel? And it's just 2, it can be very calming. Or for someone who goes into complete shutdown, again, you're bringing their awareness to proprioception, and it just brings them more into the moment. And then I'm not going to go over these because we all have had this training, but I teach, and I begin to work with activation and deactivation by having somebody, squeeze their shoulder, their arm, track that deactivation. And I realized maybe with SE, that hasn't been part of the training. So what I'll show you is this: you squeeze on your trapezius, you just squeeze down your arm, squeezing into your wrist and your fingers. There's a lot of tension and you're held in your hands. And then just let that go, close your eyes, and just track and be with sensations and notice what happens next. If I notice a client's activated doing that, I have them open their eyes slightly to look down. And for some people, they might be like, oh, I didn't feel anything. That's information. They aren't staying with their experience. Or for someone who uses intellectualization, they're so intent and habituated to know that they can't tolerate noticing what happens. They open their eyes. These are all cues, information about pacing. So you'd obviously switch sides as well, do that same thing, teaching somebody about the self-hug, teaching them constricting your quads by putting your heels to the floor and with your toes pointing up. That's a way for them to identify their quads. And then just hold the constriction. I tell people, put your feet up, have your heels pushed into the floor, and then just feel your thighs. And if you those are your quadriceps. And then I tell them, now you can have your feet flat, because they can do this in a business meeting. I've had people do this in a divorce proceeding, just they're presencing themselves when they're overwhelmed. And then track that. And then the bell and bowl is just another piece that I work with. And I work with VU, but I did put it here because this is really the container. And I use some other tools as well, but this is just some of the somatic experiencing tools for that container. And what I tell people is the reason, I teach clients about 8 tools. No one tool is going to work every time. That's why you have, toolbox, medical kit, whatever the metaphor, that it's fine if it doesn't work. Or sometimes at first I just didn't feel good to me. Now it feels great. So it's also, as things evolve, you have more options to just be freshly curious about. Okay, so just want to make room. If there's a question, like one question before I continue, just want to make room for that, Mike, if you want to read anything. And did I even prompt you to write a question?
No, there's no questions yet.
Whoopsie. Okay, well, if anybody has a question, you don't have to just raise your hand. See if there's somebody. I can't see everybody, but see if I can. Mike, do you see everybody?
I'm watching for you, Christine.
Okay. So if you have a question, comment, put your video on, raise your hand. And if not, that's fine. Oh, Sylvie. Okay. So Sylvie, why don't you jump on and just ask your question?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's nice
Oh,
to
you're
see.
welcome. Yeah.
I'm in bed, not feeling well, so I'm just going to keep my mic, my thing off. That's okay. So what would you advise if a client slips into a state of dysregulation, like let's say I show up late and they can't get back into their window of tolerance during the session?
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Well, that would be the first and foremost. Just curious, would this, just in your example, in person or
Telehealth.
telehealth? Okay, cool. Great. Well, again, everything is fodder for healing. If you show up late or someone else shows up late, what an opportunity. I have goosebumps actually as I'm thinking about this. What an opportunity to have an authority figure take responsibility, to really acknowledge, take accountability, and apologize, that could model what didn't perhaps happen for their trauma. So if they can do social engagement, if they're angry with you, make room for the part that's angry. I would really go ventral vagal as much as possible. And if they're just like, they can't, they're just so activated and frustrated and they don't want to use words, I might just invite them, and not to try to get rid of it. I mean, and that would be important to know the client well enough, because sitting with the discomfort of a client being pissed off at you is also healing. To tolerate that, to not shut them down, to not minimize, to not make it better right away. It's just like, I am with you and all of you is welcome. So I would really stay with the upset. And if they were just like, oh, it's so in my body and I just can't shake it because there's so many times this has happened in my life, I might invite, depending on who they are in our relationship and how long we've worked together, I might invite a little push hand against a wall just to be able to make space for honoring the activation in the nervous system. Again, not to get rid of it, but to be curious about it. And it may be, again, if I've worked with them for some time, I might, using what I'm teaching today, to get curious about the part that's really pissed off.
Right.
And I might say, so tell me what the part that's angry with me wants me to hear. And let me really just let you know I'm very curious and I want to hear from that part. And I would facilitate a dropping in to create safety for that part, because that's a protector, for that part to be able to be held and listened to. And I might also say, what I would qualify it, what does this part want all of you, your full self, to hear, and for me in relationship with you to hear and witness, just to make space for the full being of the client. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
so
much.
welcome. Oh, you're so welcome. My pleasure. Thank you for your question. Okay, so I'm gonna and I just have to tell you, it's so fun to be teaching again. I haven't done this for a while, so I love this. Wish we had all weekend. And I can't get rid of, okay, oh, here it is. All this technology. So I have this composite case, as I mentioned when I talked with Mike and Mark Ludwig. This is the women who came in, like, in a sense, thinking of my practice. These are some aspects, some parts of my practice just arose in my awareness and my energetic field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over a composite and just then go through some slides and let you know kind of how I worked. And Sylvie, your question in terms of dysregulation, I cover that in a very somatic manner as well. So there might be something else that will serve your question. And oopsie boom boom, hold on. So this composite, and I've obviously held enough of the information to keep confidentiality. This is non-identifiable, so it's vague enough, and a composite. So this woman is Caucasian, cisgender, heterosexual woman in her mid-40s. History of panic attacks, and the memories came later in life, and that's where the panic attacks were profound. And this woman took 3-4 months off of work because she couldn't really function. There's also depression. There's been 2 major depressive episodes, no suicide attempts, and addiction, alcoholism, food challenges, and sleeping pills. And there's an intergenerational transmission of addiction. There's alcoholism on both sides of her lineage. What I want to say, as you hear me speak about this client and subsequent slides of talking about how I work with this client, I just want to invite you to just imagine, as I continue, if this client was not all white, was not all cisgender women, not all heterosexual, and not having some means financially, what would it look like from a different cultural, racial, sexual orientation, gender, or economic lens? And to state, I am a white Caucasian therapist who is an aspect of the interchange in the intersubjective field. How is it if this client was not all white, which my practice is very, very diverse, but that's also another consideration. White supremacy, institutional trauma. It's not there's institutional trauma certainly as well in my lineage being Irish, but it's also to be holding the BIPOC experience and noticing if you're an authority and you're Caucasian, that needs to be held from my perspective. And I want to invite you to consider that in your awareness as you're working with very young trauma, working to have secure attachment as a possibility, and working with parts, which can be, if there's an immense amount of shame, and pacing is a very strong consideration. So all of these are factors, and also to consider what might this case be like as you hear it if I was a person of color and my client was all white, this composite. So these are just curiosities to hold as I continue. For this client, the parents were not married at the time of inception, very young parents. And the mother was immensely stressed during pregnancy. She was probably 19 or 20. The parents divorced when the client was 2 years old, and there was sexual abuse from the mother's live-in boyfriend. There were issues in terms of socioeconomic. The mother both wanted to have partners for the connection, and also financially, she brought a lot of men into the home, partly to share expenses. And what I will say is, so this client, it's a single mother and not much contact with the father at all, pretty much missing in action. And the grandmother played a very powerful role as an attachment figure. So what occurred with 2 years of sexual abuse around that time by the live-in boyfriend, and the mother's stress, and the mother's desire to really focus on the partner and his needs based on her trauma of serving the man. And you think this is, the mother was raised in the 40s. So you can also hold that context in terms of culture and society for her and what she learned. And then how the mother passed that on to the client, in the sense that this client learned that being lovable was sacrificing herself, not having needs. And for really, the emotions that were welcomed were joy and gratitude to the mother. There are times the client said that it was a very clear sense. And again, the memory as a 5-year-old, think about the memory was buried, but also the way in which a 5-year-old brain holds concepts, deals with, there's no abstract thinking. There's so much around brain development that also, for young trauma, and this is sexual abuse, but for really overwhelming states, the memory is very different. And so for her, she didn't remember, but she had aspects that she remembers her mother telling her, "Oh, honey, that was just a dream." And it was actually, in retrospect, when her memory started coming, it was the mother gaslighting her, and partly from her own overwhelm. So we want to hold the mother as well with compassion and curiosity. And if the client, as a young girl, would be upset, angry, scared, frustrated, sad, the mother would guilt trip her. "I do so much for you." And basically over time, the client learned just to subjugate emotion. She intellectualized. She lost her trust in her own felt sense. And she lost trust in herself, because the gaslighting at such a young age, and Peter Levine talks about this, like the biological need for closeness. And yet when the parent also is part of the impingement, there's also those fight or flight impulses to be able to have space from the object of impingement. And that is a double bind. And that happened profoundly with this composite client, that I need mom. And if she's telling me it's just a dream, she's my moon and my sun. Therefore, it's a dream. And there's a cutting off of self, cutting off of the felt sense. And you can imagine the use of denial. It formed very early. Dissociation, certainly in terms of sexual abuse, that was her protector. That's all she really had available to her as a young girl. Avoidance as an adult, absolutely. There's an avoidance, and I can say within this context, and I want to keep myself moving, is her relationships are very challenged. She doesn't know how to say no in partnership. She always says yes. She's very compliant, but she avoids with alcohol, sleeping pills, and food. And then the compartmentalization, intellectualization, all of this are protectors from shame, self-hate, and pain. And there was a lot of self-hate with this client. And the outcome of doing parts work with somatic experiencing is that client really had a felt sense of I matter, my needs are okay, and I can set a healthy boundary and I won't be abandoned, or I won't be gaslit, or I won't be chastised or rejected. So moving along, I'm just wanting to track my time here. Make sure I give you time for an experiential. So I'm just going to go through these slides with a little bit less detail. I want to just somatic experiencing considerations with working with safety around someone who's denial, intellectualization, and compartmentalization, or anyone with early trauma, or anyone that you notice has a lot of sympathetic or hypoarousal states, or a global high situation, most definitely. And that is this client has global highs. So I want to know, either in relationship or when they do orienting, are their eyes darting or they have curiosity? If I invite them to let their eyes wander, are their eyes darting, or are they able to really allow themselves to take up time and space? Are they exploring the full space? And I guide them to do that. I give them permission, but are they 360 behind them? Or some clients, it's literally, you can just see the tension, the constriction, the control. That's giving you a lot of information. If they are able to access a neutral or pleasing object or shadow or something of meaning in the environment, or is it distressing or nothing? I've had clients where I've asked them to orient and they see everything that needs, oh, there's a cobweb, there's a crack in the wall, oh my God, there's clutter there. And I've had, some people with profound states of challenge, and they literally pick like the blank wall, and that tells me a lot, and that's something to just notice for pacing. And as assessing for safety, is that beginning to have something soothing? That's the beginning of a resource that you can work to anchor. So again, that would be one of the first things I work with. Supporting activation and deactivation for someone for this client. Can she tolerate sensations? At first, she couldn't. So I would work with social engagement, and I would work with just the thought and image stream and not go into sensation. And certainly if there's intrusive thoughts, I stay with social engagement. If someone is getting overwhelmed, like Sylvie, for your client, if there was ever that moment of going inside and there's overwhelm, always have a client open their eyes or a soft gaze looking down. I work with some clients to, if I'm anchoring a resource, and I'll say for this composite client, the challenge to stay and tolerate interoceptive states, not just sensation, but just to be with oneself, was very much not available. I have clients I'm working with currently who have profound anxiety, super intellectual. They really can't slow down. But what I'll work with is I'll have, say, a resource in the with the orienting. I'll have them close their eyes for 1 second, not even to feel sensation, just to notice. I'll have them open their eyes, either engage or orient, so that increases tolerance. And then I repeat it. And we work to build the capacity. So that's certainly with young states and with other aspects. And I do that, and I have buy-in with my clients. We're going to do this, like probably 10 times today in our session. Is that okay with you? Yes. And you'll see a progression, hopefully. If not, asking a shape or size of the object, if there is one, helps strengthen the client's observer to decrease overwhelm, and also allow deactivation to happen, because that we want to do is we want to be able to not yet work with oscillation, but we certainly want to work with activation, deactivation, so they can tolerate going inside. Hold on, I have to move everyone. And then,
Christine, are you open for questions, or should they wait for another
no,
time?
I'm going to have them wait because I
Okay.
want to have you do an experiential, but thank you. I have a few more slides and then there'll be an experiential, but there'll be a discussion at the end. So thank you so much for asking, Mike. And thank you everyone for your questions. If someone is flooded, again, my intention is to not have anyone overwhelmed, but if I notice that in their physiology, I have them say their name, the date, the year, the location that they are right in the moment. Sometimes someone will say it's 1973. And they're blown away. They're like, oh my God, they kind of get it. Like, where am I? They're locked into, if you will, a malignant regression in some aspects. So I utilize this both for somatic experiencing for their autonomic nervous system regulation, but to help that they have a resource. This is something that they can do on their own if they're having a panic attack or they're really falling into depression. And I tell them, speaking out loud, the vagus nerve goes through the vocal cords and you're hearing your own voice. So you're all these aspects of affecting the nervous system, it's right there. And I won't go into self-soothing positive self-talk, but what that does is also bringing compassion to speak out loud to yourself on behalf of a challenged state that, again, helps orient because you're hearing your own compassionate adult voice. So I'm going to just go through these quickly. In key considerations when you work with parts, they can be any person, gender, race, can be a god or goddess, an animal, or an aspect of nature. Absolutely. It's an inner universe. All manifestations are welcome. Ask permission to slow down, to listen to the arising part. And the part could be, as I said, for this client, it was immense self-critic and self-hate. Another aspect is, I don't know who I am, as an example. I ask permission. If it's no, stay ventral vagal, social engagement, so you reestablish safety. And if they say yes, I just invite the part. I'll just say, allow the part that wants to be witnessed by you as an adult and by me as your therapist to really know that they have space to share. And it might not be verbal. It might be that they want to take you somewhere. So it's not always verbal. So then you wait with compassion and you can welcome additional parts because a lot of times there's, well, not a lot, definitively all the time, we have so many parts of us there can be in conflict. If you have a client in a double bind and they have a part that wants to stay with the partner and part that wants to leave, you can welcome each part to speak and you can negotiate a little bit of an experience. With this composite client, it actually helped to have the young wounded part be able to have the integrated adult reassure her, like, sweetie, you don't need to be in the driver's seat. I've got this. And I work with clients to have those younger parts realize I've made it. Like, actually, does this young part realize she's not alone right now? With profound complex PTSD, there's such an aloneness. So having a conversation between having the integrated adult that you facilitate work with, I can handle this. I've got support, I have resources, and I'm going to work with you. I'm here with you, and you're not alone. Those are really profound in helping, certainly with this composite client, to begin to forge a relationship with self. And also helping a client slow down to relate to parts with my facilitation. And I hold kindness and I hold compassion and curiosity. It helps model that for the client. They have increased self-esteem, and it helps within the context how I work, their ability to say no. This is the last slide before we do an experiential. So what I want to say is ways to start working with parts using SE, the felt sense of support, powerful. right? I guide my clients to just get pillows under their arms, pillow behind their back, sit in a place, not a rolling chair, a desk chair, but a place they can ground, that they can feel supported. If it's not right, I want to make it right. Let's get the right pillows. Felt sense of support. When there's enough safety and they can tolerate interoception, there's going to be a place where emotions will begin to arise, hopefully in a titrated manner. And you can ask, this is a doorway into, doesn't have to be formal parts work, but it can be a really useful piece. If these tears could speak, what might they say? You have no idea what they might say. And there can be so many layers. It might not just be sadness, it might be relief. So you're making room for that. And then accessing, working with parts work, using self-protector motor response as a benevolent protector, that self-protective, say, a motor response as if it's like an extension of the arm, and helping the client totally extend their arm, fully straighten their arm. And then I have them engage their shoulder another 2 inches for that full extension, and for them to feel that, to really just stay with that for a moment. That is helping bring out those fight responses, healthy aggression. Boundaries are right here. And within the context of the strength of the bone, that implicit sense of I can. And you're helping that, because that's what the client certainly needs. And that's what I've done many times with my client. Another piece that I think is extremely important with parts work that I utilize with somatic experiencing, some clients can't access a benevolent protector. When I do that work, I ask permission. Would it be okay if I took that over? And I might go. I'm I'm a strong advocate for my clients. I might, if it feels like within the context of the case, and with this composite client, I actually went at maybe the 4th time we did this work of benevolent protector. I went and I talked with the parent, the mother. Your daughter needs you right now. She is overwhelmed. She's terrified. She's afraid to tell you. She's afraid of getting in trouble. She is in pain, and she needs you to pull away from your boyfriend, walk into her bedroom, and find her on her bed under the covers. That's working with something like that. The client hears an adult advocating. There's ways that then some of that ultra independence or resistance to having a need can begin to melt, and see what happens from there forward. What happens next? So you're working with T+4 within the context of parts as well. And I work some memories or some event like over and over again, and I see the progression of the internal realm evolving and healing. The event doesn't change, but oh, instead of hiding under my bed, having a panic attack, not a breathing, I'm walking out of the house into a field of flowers, and I'm meeting my husband. Like, oh, and we can work with the part that is terrified, that does need that support. And then the client can access it more as well. And so what I can say is, working with this composite client, the outcome is that she's been able to feel met and honor her needs, be able to listen and hear from these younger parts. Some of protectors, honor the protectors, not necessarily, even alcoholism or any abuse, honor the protector. Not necessarily to say that's effective, but it was needed. And to work forward over time using somatic experiencing and these skills of parts to listen, to really listen, and to then help negotiate so that there may be agreements, or there may become awareness like, oh, this protector is in the driver's seat, or this rebel who's out of control and has like a death wish because no one cared about me is in the driver's seat. Oh, I didn't know that. So that's what I mean in terms of combining this work. What I'd like to do, given that we don't have that much time, but I really would like to have you, I'm going to lead you through a brief exercise knowing that I want to make room for some questions. But what I'd like is to give you your own experience. I'm going to breathe for a moment because I'm realizing I'm looking at the clock. So I'm going to just take a moment. Okay. Presence myself. Pull my energy back and just say, we're going to have a short moment to drop in. I'm not going to necessarily have you write takeaways because we're just not going to go there just because it's a new moment. And then we're going to have breakout groups, and you're just going to have about 2 minutes each to share, or you can have it a collective. And it's going to be just a touch in. Again, if you don't want to do this, that's fine. You have choice. And if you do, I invite you to close your eyes. And I'm going to bring you through just an internal experience. Okay. So for a moment, this is intention is to connect with an internal part that's a protector to keep you safe. And close your eyes and feel all the places where your body meets the structures that support you. Notice your sit bones, your back body, your feet and hamstrings. And notice what it's like to let all of your weight, or as much that feels comfortable, to be caught by the structure. Breathe naturally, yet notice the relaxation that occurs when you exhale, the relaxation in your diaphragm. And bringing your attention deeper within yourself and all that we've endeavored thus far today. Invite any protector who might want to be witnessed and seen to come. The protector may be, I said as before, an animal, a god or goddess, someone in your life who's no longer living, or someone who is, could be your adult self, any gender, any race. And it may come in the form of sensations, images, emotions, or impulses. And allow your conscious awareness to be drawn to one of these protectors. Notice where you, if you do, feel this presence or energy or life force in your body, or it might be on your body. And for those of you who have connected with the part that has come, just stay with that for a moment. For anyone who feels uncomfortable, dislikes the part that's shown up, is annoyed or afraid by it, just acknowledge the part of you that feels uncomfortable and ask that part if it's willing to give you some space so that you can learn more from this protector. Ask it to step back. And just taking your time, ask this protector what it wants you to know at this time. And holding attentive, compassionate curiosity, listen. And if this feels like enough contact for today for you, you can thank this part, or you can take one step further and ask this protector, what does it imagine would happen if they stopped playing the role that they're playing? What is this protector concerned about that will happen? And the answer may come in an image, it may come in words, it may come in a feeling in your body or sensation. And if it feels right to take the next step, ask this protector what it needs from you, from the integrated adult, now or in the future. Just hold space with open, compassionate curiosity. And so I'd like to invite you in this brief moment of dropping in to acknowledge and thank all the parts that showed up in the protector who spoke to you today. And also thank all the parts that stepped back so that you could interact with the protector that you did. And slowly bring your attention to the outside. Notice the sound of my voice and all the places where your body meets the structure of the chair or couch that you're sitting on. And you can slowly open your eyes and orient. Or you can push your feet and constrict your quads. You can do a bell and bowl, a self-hug. And I'm going to take a moment, and Andrea, we're not going to do breakout groups so that we have time to talk together. Yeah, but thank you. But just take a moment and just do whatever you need to do to presence yourself, because we are going to transition. But before, just honoring wherever you're at, if you need to stand or walk in the room or drink a little bit of water or jot something down. Yeah. And that is a brief dipping your toe into the curiosity and the respect of listening. Yeah. I hope that was of service. So wanting truly to make room for anyone to share your experience of any, that either that exercise or a client that you have, just a brief, we have about 5 minutes. So if maybe 2 people could speak, that would be lovely. So if you have either a question or a comment, Mike, I don't know if you're gonna.
Julie had a question on the chat. Why do you specifically ask about autoimmune issues versus other medical conditions?
Great. I want to know if they're syndromal in terms of the trauma, if their anxiety or their activation in their nervous system has gone to that point of syndrome. Tells me that there's perhaps more of a global high or just an extreme dysregulation in their nervous system. And I just, of course, when I take a client on, I assess for medication and we have a longer conversation. So if somebody's on like hypothyroid medication, I will know that. But yeah, that's a great question. But just for that initial, yeah. Does that answer your question? You can put a thumb up if you have a follow-up. I mean, if it's good, thumb up, and if you have a follow-up, you can put it in the chat.
Sure, pretty much.
Okay, cool. Okay. These are the resources, just so you have them. Just two books, if in case it's of interest, if you want to learn more, that I have found, well, interesting. Fritz Perls being transcribed is kind of fascinating. Really get a sense of his personality.
She did ask one more thing. Not sure why autoimmune would be more syndromes than others.
That's a good question. I mean, any health condition is of interest. Most people tell me about that. But if their stress, say, if their adrenals, if their whole endocrine system has become overwhelmed, then their immune system is attacking their body. It's seeing it as foreign, an organ. And so I've had people come with POTS where their adrenals are so dysregulated they can't stand. They end up in the emergency room several times, or someone with rheumatoid arthritis. I mean, I also assess for like chronic fatigue, and people usually tell me that. So Epstein-Barr, but that is actually, can lead into some real autoimmune components. So it's not only autoimmune, but I definitely want to know about autoimmune because it tells me, again, if it's entered a level of chronic, that it's tipped over into a place where the autonomic nervous system is so in defense that it's attacking its own body. Yeah, but
Christine, does that help you in the sense of um, uh, planning for what you're doing, depending on the height of what you're uncoupling and recoupling and
absolutely.
and
Absolutely, yes. I mean, that's giving me perhaps some time to titrate. I don't want to do too big of an intervention too quickly. I want to actually allow the physiology and the nervous system to have success, to be able to tolerate, metabolize small input, and that also can lead to perhaps some deactivation of a chronic state.
I also use it for monitoring when they're getting better. Because usually that symptomology stuff starts to clear up without us really noticing, like, oh, I'm sleeping better. We hadn't even been working on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of,
yeah, please.
I was just this is Julie. A lot of the autoimmune, I mean, a lot of it is environmental, and I don't mean like family systems, but like literal environment, like cold or certain, yeah. So I just sort of wanted to recognize that it's not just emotional activation. It could be medicine or I don't know, environmental.
True. I mean, that's a great point. And
toxins, yeah.
Absolutely. If they live like two blocks from a Superfund site, absolutely, of course. And I want to know that all parts of the body are of interest. So I don't make the assumption, but I do want to just put it on the map so that I can learn more about it and learn more about the client. And so it's not certainly just emotional, but I also talk to clients about meeting, like, okay, if you're not sleeping and your mood shifted 4 years ago when you went into menopause and you are doing things and you're screaming and you're out of control, but boy, 6 years ago that wasn't the case. I want to know that with compassion so that I can also say, I would invite you to meet with your general practitioner, or I give them a referral for a naturopath and get a hormone panel. Like, let's look at that. Or someone who has challenges of depression, and I might ask, well, is there a cycle to that depression? Oh gosh, yeah, every like right before my period. That tells me that could be menstrually related, right? The HPA axis, the adrenals connected to the ovaries, connected to the the hippocampus, adrenal, pituitary, but all the stress. I mean, the endocrine system is endlessly fascinating. And there's a doorway in, not definitively, but it's certainly a doorway in of like, how is the body doing over time? So one more question, or let me ask if I should be ending this and deferring to Maureen, to you or Mike to close this out, because I know you might have a few things to say.
I think we have a time for one more question. Julie noted there's something really lovely on autoimmunity and women's health on NPR. I will look that up. Thank you for that.
Oh, great.
And why there's she's right. Women's health has been so understudied. It's grotesque, and I'm really grateful that there's lots of people raising their voices to fight for that better research.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Does anybody have one more question? And if not, Christine, I could throw a question too.
Okay. or a comment, anything, either anybody want to share what came in that brief exercise, or anybody want to comment on anything that a takeaway that they might want to articulate as a way to integrate, that's fine too.
I want to just a quick thing of it that really helped me settle. I've been dealing with some existential shame these past few days, and so to be able to touch into that protector piece was a nice reminder, but it's also an interesting way of approaching it. So thank you for that. My gut settled quite a bit with that exercise. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. Courageous one.
Do you have any nudges for how to kind of like either help somebody keep moving through charge, discharge, or how you're guided evoke a pendulation or a movement rather than a sticking? Because I could easily imagine getting, I didn't. Were so graceful. I didn't get stuck in any part, but I could imagine it happening. So.
Oh, that's a great question. I tried to keep my slides like thinner, so I took some things out, and thank you, Mike, for that question. Because what I find is pendulation can be helpful, but holding both and is so powerful. And that is just, I forgot about that. So thank you, Mike. Holding both and at the same time and noticing what happens next and experiencing what happens next can open up people's world. Because I have clients who literally pendulate between extreme polarities. They're either here or they're there, and they don't have a bridge. And so whether it's parts work or just activation states, that actually can be a movement through, like a flow state that's new for them. Yeah.
So I would like to, if we could, just go ahead and let this be a good ending for us. Unless Christine, you wanted to say anything else, or there's maybe one more time for one more voice.
Well, I want to honor actually that we end in the time that we said we would. So I think it's a good time to pause for now. And I do want to thank everyone for coming and all who are listening to this. And this last slide, just if there's anyone wants to reach out, there's my email. If you want to join a mailing list, you're welcome to. And I wish you all the very best on your healing of your own journey and of the work you do with the clients and in the world. So thank you.
And thank you, Christine. Could we maybe all unmic for a second and do the ritual of appreciation we do in America, and clap for Christine and just celebrate the gift of her time.
Thank you,
Thank
Christine.
you,
Thank you
Christine.
so much.
Thank
It was
you.
wonderful.
My
It's
whole
wonderful.
body got so
Excellent.
much from this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you.
And I also want to honor the fact that everybody here is a healer in their own right and doing a tremendous amount of work. And to just take a moment to say, I celebrate you. You're really important. Your work uplifts a lot of people. I know our clients are not always in a state where that kind of gratitude can come forward easily. So grateful for that. Remember to take good care of yourselves and be as kinder to yourselves than you think are possible. The NorCal SEPA is really set up to help grow, support, and deepen the SE community in the Northern California region. Please join us in helping make that possible. And we are deeply grateful to have our local luminaries like Christine, who've delved in so many deep ways and pull up these gems of clinical practice and heart to share. If you feel drawn to share as well, please reach out and help us lead the way for Northern California in the to have more access to SE and have people who graduate the SE program have a home to come to after they finish their training. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. And I don't know if Maureen, you want to say anything as president, but we'll just wrap up here unless you would like to say.
Just so grateful. My heart is really feeling open, and I'm feeling much more connected to you all and to the community, and look forward to more of our gatherings. Thank you so much, Christine.
You're very welcome. My real honor and pleasure. And it's really nice to connect with you all and to see you, Maureen and Andrea and Mike, and happy holidays, and may there be